A new film is taking a look at the challenges and achievements of historically black colleges and universities in America.
Stanley Nelson, a filmmaker, takes us back to the time of slavery and traces the history of these institutions from then until now. Here's a preview of his PBS documentary, Tell Them We Are Rising.
The question for African Americans has always been, what is education's purpose? Who controls it? And what is the relationship of education to the broader aspirations of our people?
The more the system denies you the chance to read and to write, the more that becomes a prize that you must have.
Black colleges were redefining what it meant to be black in America. You were pursuing a career where intellect mattered.
An educated black population could not be an enslaved black population.
If you weren't out there demonstrating, then something had to be wrong with your school.
We wanted freedom now, but whites were not prepared for any changes here.
I think they should be kept out any way possible.
A slaveholder could work a slave to death. He could rape a slave. He could do virtually anything but teach a slave how to read or write.
As soon as the war breaks out, the first thing they want is to get an education.
They wanted those schools to be as free as possible from paternalism, from racism, whether subtle or blatant.
Movements are easily birthed on HBCU's campuses.
We must love and protect each other.
We're all going through the same experience.
HBCU is somewhere where I can be completely myself.
The black college experience provides the place to be in the majority. That is such a unique and empowering experience.
This HBCU experience has taught me that anything is possible as long as you have that one spark.
In celebration of Black History Month, we've invited documentary director Stanley Nelson. He is joining us. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to
Thank you so much. This is such an incredible documentary.
I love it.
Yeah, we were blown away, and when we heard that you were available to come in and talk to us, we said we absolutely had to have you. One of the things I want to focus on to kick off this conversation is the concept that perhaps a lot of people in this country may not be familiar with, which is the point that's made in the piece that we saw there, that the slave owners did not allow, you could do anything to a black person, a slave. You could not teach them to read or write. What were they so afraid of?
Education. You know, one of the things that we learned in making the film was that, you know, if you think of a slave's world as being that plantation that they lived on, you know, slavery lasted for hundreds of years. So if you were a slave, you didn't know that there was an Africa. You didn't know that there was a Europe. You didn't know that there was a China. All you knew was slavery. All you knew, you didn't even know that there was a New York. All you knew was that little world of that plantation, and that's how they wanted to keep it.
I think the fact that one of the first things they did when they got the opportunity was to pursue education speaks to the hunger. When they saw white people speaking to books, I think it says in your documentary, right? Speaking to books, they knew that was something important. And this documentary sort of chronicles how education helped to propel African Americans along, not only in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of political knowledge and know-how.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that HBCUs have always provided is this kind of safe intellectual space for African Americans. So many movements, so many different things were launched at HBCUs. Mm-hmm. So Brown versus Board of Ed came out of Howard. You know, the sit-in movement came out of North Carolina A&T. Martin Luther King graduated from an HBCU. So HBCUs have been central to so many movements, so many important things that have come out of the black community.
Yeah. The documentary also tells the firsthand accounts of alumni of these universities going back to the 1940s. Give me a couple that stood out to you.
Well, there's one great story of a guy and who meets his wife in the administration office as he's registering for school. He meets his wife there, and it kind of, I mean, they're just so cute. They're in their 90s now, and it ends with them saying, you know, and 68 years ago today we were married. You know, and so it's just a beautiful, beautiful story.
Yeah, and you profile specific universities, starting with Hampton University. Hampton's where my husband graduated from, so I was particularly interested. He's taken me back for homecoming. It was like mandatory that I would go back and enjoy it, or else I don't think we would be married. But you talk about Booker T. Washington, and Booker T. Washington, Hampton University is not the college that he had intended at all.
Right.
What it is today.
No. These colleges are very different. Hampton is very different. Tuskegee is very, very different from what they were. And we talk about Booker T. and the whole idea of what they called industrial education, which was being pushed at that time, which was education for service. The idea that, you know, the place for African Americans coming out of the Civil War was as, you know, skilled laborers, as a skilled carpenter, a skilled cook, you know, a skilled bricklayer. And that was the place for African Americans for years to come, until they could finally move into the mainstream, into equality. But W.E.B. Du Bois, one of the great figures in African American history, comes in with others and says, wait a minute.
He criticized them, right?
He said, wait a minute. We need, deserve, and are capable of the same education that white folks need.
How did you want people to feel about Booker T. Washington?
I wanted people to reassess Booker T, you know, and that Booker T did a lot of great things. He built Tuskegee basically by hand. He and the students built this major institution which still exists today. But I think what happened with Booker T was that his philosophy becomes the only philosophy, the largest philosophy in this country.
It was the philosophy that got the money.
Right. He's getting money from these northern industrialists, Carnegie, Peabody, all these people are pouring money into him. And so he becomes like the spokesman for African American education. But also, one of the reasons why we centered on Booker T, we love that story, was because he was a college president. And he is arguably the most powerful, the most famous black man in the country. And that's how important education was, that a college president has that status.
I did find it, though, interesting that W.E.B. Du Bois and other black intellectuals of the day criticized him, because it sort of speaks to a question that is still being debated today. There is not just one voice for African Americans in this country. And when somebody like Booker T. Washington amassed all of this power, others were like, look, this isn't a monolithic concept here. I mean, you are suggesting that we go to college so that we can be in the employ of white America. And that's not what education is about.
Right. I mean, I think, you know, you also have to understand that, you know, Booker T. was a special case. He had been a slave. He had been freed by the Civil War as a young boy. He's functioning in the Deep South, in Alabama and Mississippi. So he looked at it like, okay, let's you know, incrementally you know, look for progress. And Du Bois and others said, no, we're going for the whole thing like right now.
But you need all those factors.
You do.
You need the people who are pushing and pulling. I think if he came out like W.E.B. Du Bois, they would have burned the place down.
No. They would have been like, you can't have this building, you can't have this school.
Yeah. You know, but so looking into the future now, you know there are arguments about whether or not you really do need HBCUs anymore. You know, black people can get into other colleges now. There are programs to help college populations become more diversified. So explain to someone who may not understand why historically black colleges have a place now.
Well, I think one of the first things we have to understand is that the education system for many African Americans in this country is not equal. It's not an equal playing field. So until, you know, you go into grade school and you have the same chance of an education as a white person, you need something to lift you up. Black colleges have always been this kind of nurturing environment, and that's what they do. You know, my father was the first person in his family to graduate high school, and then he attended Howard. And they told him there, you're smart, you can do it. That's the first time he ever heard that. And black colleges are still doing that. They still graduate an outsized number of people in the STEM fields, of doctors, lawyers, dentists, judges. They still do that, and they're so important today.
You know, just to sort of springboard off that, Vlad, we were talking earlier, and, you know, I'm Canadian, so there are no historically black colleges in Canada. And when I was in college and I visited Hampton or Howard University, it was the first time I had been anywhere where everyone was like me. Not just that they were black, but that they were pursuing their education. There were university students and professors, and it was like a completely different world. And I didn't realize what I was missing until I was there.
Well, that was exactly what I was going to say. I realize now what I mean. We have a lot of folks here at CBS News, Altura Rhymes, producers on Evening News, Kim Godwin, Michelle Miller is a correspondent. She went to Howard. And when I talk to them about their experiences, and I juxtapose that with my experiences in college, I loved my alma mater, both of them, but it was just different, and I'm sort of intrigued, and I sometimes wonder, what did I miss out on?
Well, I think one of the things that HBCU provide is what I call the safe intellectual space for African Americans, and it's the only one we have, the only safe intellectual space, and it's a space where, as a student, you know that you succeed or fail on your own merits. You know that, and that's really important to understand, that you know it's not about something else, it's not about your skin color, it's not about something else, it's about what you do, and I think that's really important.
And also importantly, I think, one of the things I'm extremely fascinated by is the tight alumni network that exists at all these schools. I mean, I know schools where people are rah-rah, but, at HBCUs, people are tight, and the idea of networking and helping people along 40 or 50 years after you've left college is remarkable.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Look, we've shown this film around the country at screenings at different HBCUs, different conventions, things like that. People come in their school colors, people come in their fraternity, sorority colors. We've already started getting tweets today of people wearing their school colors for the screening tonight, so it's just been an incredible experience.
So great. Thank you, Stanley Nelson. Thank you so much for this film, and thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.